The sound of a slap echoed through the hall on New Year's Eve, but the decision Renata made at that moment would change not only her life, but also the fate of the women of a city. Watch until the end and witness what a woman can do. It was the last night of the year in Chicago, and Renata's house was filled with a festive and hopeful atmosphere. Golden lights twinkled on the modest Christmas tree. As she finished decorating the table with a dinner she had been planning for weeks, a persistent thought tormented her in the back of her mind. Dolores, her mother-in-law, was never satisfied with anything, and tonight would be no different. Despite everything, Renata kept smiling, clinging to the hope that this new year would be different. The guests began to arrive, among them Alonzo, her husband, with an already opened bottle of champagne. Dolores entered shortly after, inspecting the room with a critical eye that paused for a few seconds on the table with turkey and mashed potatoes. "Don't try too hard, Renata," Dolores said, narrowing her eyes. "We don't want you to overdo it again." Renata pressed her lips together without responding. The comment was a blow disguised as a joke, one of many with which Dolores used to belittle the Alonzo family. Alonzo laughed loudly, perhaps too loudly, and toasted his mother's words in the air. As the night progressed, the evening was filled with laughter and lively conversation, but Alonzo seemed more interested in filling his glass than enjoying the moment. With the alcohol flowing, his behavior began to change. Alonzo said, "Renata," his voice louder than necessary, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "This is the best you can do? Look at these mashed potatoes. You could have added a little more salt, but what can you expect from someone who doesn't even know how to cook?" The guests laughed uncomfortably, not knowing if she was serious or joking. Renata felt her face burn with embarrassment, but chose not to respond. Dolores took advantage of the moment to throw another dart. "Well, Alonso is right. I always told him he needed a more practical woman, but he insisted that you were different." The word hung in the air like an insult. Renata closed her eyes for a second, holding back the tears. She took a sip of water, trying to calm down, but Alonzo wasn't finished. He walked toward her with a glass in his hand, stumbling a little. "Come on, Renata. Don't you have anything to say? Or did you also fail to learn how to defend yourself?" His laughter echoed throughout the room. "Alonzo." "That's enough," Renata said in a firm but trembling voice, getting up from her chair. That attempt to defend herself ignited a dangerous spark in Alonzo, who dropped his glass on the floor. Silence took over the room. "Shut me up," he repeated, approaching her menacingly in a second that seemed like an eternity. Alonzo raised his hand and slapped Renata across the face in front of everyone. The sound of the slap was like a gunshot, paralyzing everyone in the room. Dolores broke the silence with a phrase that froze Renata's blood. "If you had listened to me, Alonzo would never have had to do this. If I had known you weren't up to it." With tears running down her face, Renata touched her burning cheek, feeling her dignity crumble in front of everyone's gaze. There was no compassion, only morbid curiosity. Without thinking twice, she took the wedding ring off her finger, dropped it on the table, and with a broken but determined voice said, "Congratulations. You have Alonzo. I don't want him anymore." She turned and walked out the door, leaving behind the echo of murmurs and unbearable tension. Outside, fireworks lit up the city sky, but for Renata, it was the end of a cycle and the beginning of something new. With a broken heart and nerves on edge, she took a taxi and asked the driver to take her to Mariana's house, her only true friend. The taxi moved slowly through the streets of Chicago, illuminated by the constant bursts of fireworks. Inside the vehicle, Renata looked out the window, her vision clouded by tears. Her face burned, not only from the slap she had just received, but also by the weight of public humiliation. She remembered every laugh, every glance from the relatives who had witnessed her misfortune and done nothing to stop it. The voice of pain echoed in her mind, like a cruel echo. "You're not good enough." When she arrived at Mariana's modest apartment, her best friend Renata hesitated for a moment before ringing the doorbell. It was almost midnight, and the sound of the clock marking the change of year began to fill the air. Despite everything, she pressed the button firmly. A few seconds later, the door opened. Renata exclaimed, "Mariana!" Surprised and visibly concerned, She saw her friend's marked face and expression of pain. "What happened to you?" Renata couldn't answer right away. Instead of words, she let out a heart-wrenching cry that made Mariana hug her without hesitation. She let her in, closing the door behind her, and guided her to the sofa. "Breathe, my friend, breathe. What did they do to you?" Mariana insisted, sitting down next to her. Renata tried to speak between sobs, recounting the events of the night in broken details. As the story progressed, Mariana clenched her fists in anger at the abuse her friend had endured for so long. "That damn Alonso and Dolores. How dare he justify something like that?" Mariana said, her tone full of indignation. "You're not going back there. Renata, you can stay here with me as long as you need. But I don't have anything. Mariana, everything is in that house. My things, my money, my life." Renata paused, breaking down again. "I don't know how to start over." Mariana took Renata's hands firmly. "You have something much more valuable than all that. Yourself, and that's enough to start with. Together, we're going to get through this. I promise you." As Mariana's words began to calm her before continuing, "I want to know where you're watching this video from. Write your city or country in the comments. It's always amazing to see how far this story is reaching." Now let's continue with Renata's exciting journey. Renata's phone vibrated in her bag. When she took it out, she saw Alonso's name on the screen. Her heart raced, and a knot of anxiety formed in her stomach. "Is it him?" Mariana asked, guessing the answer. Renata nodded. Paralyzed, Mariana snatched the phone before she could react, and answered in a determined voice. "Listen carefully, Alonso. Renata doesn't want to talk to you, and if you have something to say, you can do it through a lawyer." Mariana hung up before he could respond. Renata looked at her friend in amazement. What if that makes it worse? Alonso isn't the type to take no for an answer. "That doesn't matter. You're not alone anymore, Renata. We're going to fight him." No matter what happened that night in Mariana's small living room, the two friends began to make a plan for Renata's future. While outside, fireworks lit up the city with bright colors. Renata decided that this new year would not be a simple change of calendar, but the beginning of her transformation. The next day, Renata woke up with swollen eyes, but with a new determination. Mariana took her to a nearby cafe for breakfast to distract her. But as they tried to relax, Renata's phone rang again. This time, it was an unknown number. "Answer it," said Mariana with a frown. "But put it on speaker." Renata nervously obeyed. "Renata," said Dolores's familiar voice, cold as ice. "I don't know what the hell you're thinking, but you better come home. Your place is with Alonso as his wife. It's not good for anyone if this becomes public." Renata felt a chill run through her body. Dolores didn't love to apologize, but to control. "I'm no longer with Alonso," Renata replied, with a tremor in her voice but firmly. "And I'm not going back. How dare you talk to me like that? What will you do alone? You're a disaster without my son." Dolores's voice was sharp and full of contempt. "No one else will love you, Renata. You're lucky that Alonso put up with you." Mariana snatched the phone and hung up, throwing it on the table. "That woman is toxic. You have to cut off all contact with them." Renata was silent for a few seconds before nodding. At that moment, she knew there would be no turning back. The sun was already high in the sky when Renata and Mariana returned to the apartment after breakfast. Renata was still nervous about Dolores's call and felt a mixture of fear and anger that would not leave her alone. Mariana, however, did not intend to let her friend sink into despair. "Renata, you can't just stand by while they try to manipulate you. We need to act, and fast," said Mariana, as she took out a notebook and began to write. "What do you suggest?" asked Renata, still a little lost. "First, you need financial independence. I've always admired your talent for sewing. Remember the dresses you made for my sister? They were beautiful. You could start a small business from here." Renata blinked in surprise. Mariana was right. She had always been good at designing and sewing, but she had never considered it as a real option. "Do you think anyone will trust me?" Renata asked uncertainly. "Of course they will. I know several people who would be delighted to commission something from you. We just need to start with the basics. I can help you promote it myself." Mariana didn't wait for Renata's response and began looking for fabrics and tools in the small space she used as a storage room. Renata watched her, feeling moved and a little hopeful, but she tried to protest. "Renata, I don't have money to invest in materials." Mariana laughed. "I have some savings, and I'll lend it to you. No buts." "Renata, this is just the beginning." For the rest of the day, the two friends worked together in a small makeshift space in the living room. Renata drew sketches while Mariana called acquaintances to get the first orders. In less than an hour, they already had 3 orders: a dress for a wedding, a suit for a graduation, and a costume for a child. Renata felt something inside her begin to revive. That night, as she settled into Mariana's sofa bed, her phone vibrated again. This time, the message was not from Dolores or Alonso, but from an unknown number. It said, "Renata, I know you're with Mariana. This isn't going to end well for you if you keep defying him. Come back before it's too late." The message made her tremble. She showed it to Mariana, who frowned. "This is intimidation, Renata. You have to keep it as evidence. Enough of letting them manipulate you." "Evidence for what?" asked Renata, still overcome by fear. "To bring them to justice, Renata. What Alonso did to you is a crime, and what Dolores is doing now is also illegal. If we don't do something, they'll keep harassing him again." For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life where Alonso and Dolores had no power over her. The next day, Renata was immersed in her sewing when a loud knock on the door startled her. Mariana got up immediately, but Renata stopped her. "It's Alonso. I know. Let me talk to him." "Are you sure?" asked Mariana, alarmed. Renata nodded decisively and approached the door, and opened it with trembling hands. There was Alonso, his expression oscillating between fury and supplication. He was carrying a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a bottle of wine in the other. Alonso began, in a sickly sweet voice. "I came to look for you. You know I went too far on New Year's Eve. I shouldn't have acted that way. But you provoked me. I just want us to go back to the way we were before." Renata felt a mixture of disgust and rage. Her voice came out firmer than she expected. "Go back to the way we were? No, Alonso. There's nothing to go back to. It ended when you hit me in front of your family and when your mother humiliated me. I don't want flowers or excuses. I want you to leave me alone." Alonso's smile disappeared instantly. He took a step forward, but Renata didn't back down. "Don't be ridiculous, Renata. You know you won't survive without me. What will you do? Sew little dresses for a living?" He was mockingly cruel. Before he could continue, Mariana appeared behind Renata, holding her phone. "Did you hear that, Renata? Leave before I call the police. And believe me, we already have enough evidence of your behavior." Alonso stepped back, surprised by the intervention. He looked at Renata with hatred before turning and leaving, but not before making a threat. "This won't end here, Renata. You'll regret this." Renata closed the door, her breathing. Mariana hugged her, offering comfort. "You did the right thing. You're much stronger than you think." For the first time, Renata felt that this was true. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions and work for Renata. Although Alonso's threats still haunted her, she clung to her small makeshift workshop as if it were her lifeline. With Mariana's help, she managed to complete her first orders. The customers were delighted with the results, and soon more orders began to arrive. For the first time in a long time, Renata felt she was in control of her life. One afternoon, while she was working on a ball gown, the apartment doorbell rang insistently. Mariana peered through the peephole and frowned. "It's Dolores," she said quietly, looking back at Renata. Renata put the fabric aside and slowly approached the door. Although part of her wanted to ignore her, she knew that Dolores would not leave so easily. "I'm going to talk to her," Renata said, taking a deep breath as she opened the door. Dolores looked at her with a serious expression, without a trace of her usual superiority. "Can we talk?" Dolores asked, without waiting for an invitation to enter. Renata crossed her arms, blocking the entrance. "Say what you have to say from there." Dolores seemed irritated, but remained calm. "Renata, this can't go on. My son is devastated. Alonso made a mistake. Yes, but you're taking it too far. He's a good man, and we all know he loves you." Renata felt indignation boiling inside her. A good man? The same man who hit me in front of his whole family, who humiliated me and showed not a shred of remorse? Mrs. Dolores, I'm not coming back. Dolores narrowed her eyes. If you keep this up, Renata, you're only going to destroy yourself. You have no idea what my son and I are capable of. Threats now? Renata replied, standing her ground. Go away, Dolores. If Alonso wants to talk, he can do so through a lawyer. Dolores took a step back, clearly annoyed. Before leaving, she issued one last warning. You'll regret challenging me. Renata closed the door and leaned against it, trying to calm the trembling of her hands. Mariana appeared at her side with a worried expression. Everything's fine. No, but I'm tired of being afraid. I'm not going to let myself be intimidated. That night, Renata and Mariana began to gather all the material they had. The threatening messages, the evidence of physical abuse, and the testimonies of friends who knew the story. They decided to seek legal help. Days later, in a modest office in the city center, Renata sat down with a lawyer named Rodrigo. He was a man in his 40s, with a serious but sympathetic expression. Your case is solid, Mrs. Renata, Rodrigo said, after listening to her story and reviewing the evidence. We can proceed with a complaint of domestic violence and harassment. I also think we can request a restraining order against your ex-husband and mother-in-law. Renata nodded. Although the fear was still present, she asked in a whisper, What will happen next? Alonso and Dolores will be summoned to testify if they try to contact or intimidate you while the case is in progress. That will only strengthen your position. Mariana squeezed Renata's hand encouragingly. Trust me, Renata, you're doing the right thing by returning to the apartment. Renata felt a little relieved, but she also knew that the struggle was just beginning. That night, while working on a new order, she received another message from an unknown number. You think you can beat us, but you don't know who you're messing with. This is just the beginning. Renata felt the fear returning, but this time, she faced it differently. She took a screenshot, saved the message, and continued working. She knew that every threat was another tool for her defense. Time passed, and although the intimidation did not stop, Renata began to see small advances in her business. Mariana helped her create a social media page to promote her designs, and soon orders came in from beyond her close circle. The positive comments from her customers restored a confidence she thought she had lost forever. One day, while delivering a dress to a local boutique, Renata noticed something strange. A man she didn't recognize was following her at a distance. She felt a chill, but decided not to confront him. Instead, she took a detour to a nearby police station and went inside. The man disappeared instantly. Renata explained the situation to an officer, who reassured her and accompanied her to Mariana's apartment. Although the incident left her shaken, it also reaffirmed her decision not to give in to fear. Renata was far from the same woman who left Alonso's house on New Year's Eve. She had learned to get up, face her fears, and build something new with her own hands. But she knew the battle was not won. Alonso and Dolores were still there, lurking, waiting for the perfect moment to attack. That night, while watching the fireworks from an event on television, Renata made a silent promise. This would be the year she would regain her freedom completely. Renata's life began to take shape at a different pace. Her days were filled with work in her small workshop, where each stitch seemed like a step toward her new independence. However, the shadows of Alonso and Dolores did not dissipate. The threats continued, sometimes veiled and sometimes openly intimidating, but Renata faced them with the conviction that justice was on her side. One morning, while reviewing some orders, her phone rang. It was Rodrigo, her lawyer. Renata, I have news. Alonso and Dolores have been officially notified of the complaint. The preliminary hearing will be in 2 weeks. He paused before continuing. For now, we must be prepared for any retaliation. Renata swallowed, feeling a mixture of relief and fear. She hung up and shared the news with Mariana, who hugged her tightly. This is an important step, Renata. You are not alone. The news quickly reached Alonso's ears, and as Renata feared, he was quick to react. One afternoon, as she was returning from delivering an order, she found Alonso waiting for her in front of Mariana's building. He was wearing a suit that seemed carefully chosen to project authority, but his expression was dark. Renata, can I talk to you? he said in a voice so soft it was unsettling. Renata stopped a few feet away, feeling every fiber of her being screaming at her not to approach him. I have nothing to say to you, Alonso. Whatever you want to tell me, tell the lawyer. He let out a dry laugh and took a step toward her. Do you really think you can win this? He asked, his tone now full of venom. You're nobody, Renata. A woman without resources or support. What do you think will happen when you're left alone? Renata felt a chill run down her spine, but she didn't let herself be intimidated. I'm far from alone, Alonso, and I'm not going to let you manipulate me anymore. Just then, Mariana appeared at the entrance of the building, accompanied by a neighbor who had noticed the tension. Alonso backed away, casting one last warning glance before leaving. That man is dangerous, Renata. We have to double security, said Mariana worriedly. Renata nodded, feeling more grateful than ever for her friend's presence. The preliminary hearing arrived quickly. Renata entered the courtroom with her heart racing, but her head held high. Rodrigo walked beside her, calming her with his presence. At the other end of the room, Alonso and Dolores waited, both with expressions of superiority that seemed designed to intimidate her. The judge listened attentively as Rodrigo presented the evidence, the threatening messages, Renata's testimony about the physical and psychological abuse, and the statements from Mariana and other close friends who had witnessed her pain. Dolores tried to interrupt several times, but the judge firmly stopped her. Mrs. Dolores, this is not the time for your personal opinions. Please respect the process, said the judge, visibly annoyed. Alonso, for his part, barely spoke. His lawyer tried to minimize the incidents, describing them as unfortunate misunderstandings, but the evidence was overwhelming. When the judge finished listening to the arguments, he ordered immediate protective measures for Renata and set a date for the trial. Upon leaving the courthouse, Renata felt a huge weight lift off her shoulders. Although the process was just beginning, she was no longer defenseless. The following days were a mixture of calm and tension. While Renata's business flourished with new orders and more recognition in her community, the threats continued. Although more subtle, one night she received an anonymous envelope under the door of her apartment. When she opened it, she found a photo of herself leaving the courthouse with a handwritten note. You're playing with fire. Renata took the note directly to Rodrigo, who added it to the case file. This only strengthens our position, Renata. Don't let them intimidate you, he said with a confidence that gave her strength. Mariana, for her part, did not let her guard down. She installed security cameras in the building and alerted the neighbors to be on the lookout for any suspicious presence. Together, the two friends formed an unbeatable team. One afternoon, while Renata was working on a particularly complicated assignment, she received a call from an unknown number. When she answered, the voice on the other end made her blood run cold. Hello, Renata. Did you think you could get rid of me so easily? It was Alonso, his tone laden with malice. I hope you're enjoying your little game, because when this is over, I assure you, you'll have nothing left. Renata hung up without responding, her hands trembling. Mariana found her later, pale and with the phone still in her hand. It was Alonso, whispered Renata, unable to utter another word. Mariana gritted her teeth in anger. That's enough. We're going to report him again, and this time he'll face the consequences. Renata's courage continued to grow. Even in the midst of the crisis, she knew the fight would not be easy, but each small victory brought her closer to the life she wanted to build. Although Alonso and Dolores remained a constant threat, Renata was determined to confront them until the end. The weeks passed, and although Renata's life was beginning to stabilize, the tension remained from years of abuse was that silence was often just the calm before the storm. Meanwhile, her workshop had become a refuge not only for her, but also for other women in the community. Mariana had begun to talk about her story with friends and acquaintances, and several women who had been through similar situations began to approach Renata. At first, they were just looking for dresses, but over time, their visits became spaces for support and camaraderie. One afternoon, while Renata was helping a young mother choose fabrics for a quinceañera dress, a neighbor knocked hurriedly on the door. Renata, there's a man outside asking for you. He seems upset. His face reflected concern. Renata felt her chest tighten. She hurried to look out the window, and there was Alonso, seemingly beside himself, pacing back and forth like a predator searching for its prey. Mariana, who was in the kitchen, ran over. Hearing the commotion, she said, "You can't face him alone, Renata. Let's call the police." Mariana quickly took out her phone. No, I don't want any more trouble. We're going to close everything up and wait for him to leave," replied Renata. Although her voice trembled, they both turned off the lights and closed the curtains, hoping that Alonso would get tired and leave. But the man did not seem willing to give up. He banged on the door loudly, shouting, "Renata, I know you're there. Stop hiding like a coward. Talk to me now, or I'll make you regret it." The shouting attracted the attention of other neighbors, who began to come out of their apartments. One of them, an elderly man, approached Alonso. "Enough," shouted the neighbor. "You have no business here. If you don't leave, we'll call the police." Alonso backed away, but not before taking one last look at Renata's door. "This isn't over," he said quietly, but loud enough for Renata to hear. When he finally left, Renata collapsed on the sofa, her hands covering her face. Mariana hugged her. "Enough is enough, Renata. This can't go on. We're going to reinforce the complaint. He's violating the protective measures." Renata nodded. She was tired of living in fear. The next day, Rodrigo filed a request with the judge to tighten the measures against Alonso. They included the recent incident and the statements from the neighbors as additional evidence. The judge not only extended the restraining order, but also ruled that Alonso would be arrested if he approached Renata again. Meanwhile, Renata channeled her frustration into her work. Every dress she sewed was an affirmation of her strength, proof that she could rebuild her life. Despite the adversity, clients kept coming, and with each compliment, her confidence grew a little more. One afternoon, while adjusting the hem of a dress, she received an unexpected call from a high-end boutique in the city center. They had seen her work on social media and were interested in collaborating with her. "Really?" Renata asked incredulously. "Of course. We would love to showcase some of your designs in our store. You have incredible talent," replied the voice on the other end of the line. Renata hung up, unable to contain a smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt that her life was moving towards something better. However, the peace of mind did not last long. A few days later, as she was walking to her workshop in the morning, she noticed someone following her. She turned around and saw a man wearing a dark cap, who quickly looked away. Renata pretended not to care, but her heart was pounding when she arrived at the workshop. She told Mariana what had happened. "We have to be more careful, Renata. This is clearly the work of Alonso or Dolores. You can't accept that you are beyond his control," said Mariana, with obvious concern. That same night, while reviewing some orders, Renata received a call from Rodrigo. "Renata, I have good news. The judge has ordered Alonso to be summoned again to answer for violating the restraining order. He is likely to face more serious consequences this time." Renata felt a glimmer of hope, but she also knew that this could provoke an even more dangerous reaction from Alonso. A few days later, while working in her workshop, she received an unexpected visitor. It was a young woman who looked nervous. "Can I talk to you? My name is Laura. I think you might understand what I'm going through." Renata invited her to sit down and listen to her story. Laura was trapped in an abusive relationship and didn't know how to get out of it. As she spoke, Renata remembered her own pain, but also her strength. "You don't have to face this alone, Laura. There is help, and you deserve a better life." Renata took the young woman's hand, offering comfort and hope. That moment marked a change in Renata. Not only was she rebuilding her life, but she was also becoming a source of support for other women in similar situations. For the first time, she felt that her pain had not been in vain. Renata was beginning to find a deeper purpose in her life. Her workshop was not only a space to create beautiful dresses, but also a refuge for women like Laura, who were seeking support and understanding in the midst of their own battles. Mariana, always supportive, helped coordinate informal meetings where they shared stories, advice, and above all, hope. However, the shadow of Alonso and Dolores did not disappear. Although Renata continued to face intimidation with courage, the fear of what they might do never completely left her. One afternoon, while working on a special design for the boutique that had shown interest in her creations, Renata received a message from Rodrigo. "Renata, we have a date for the trial. It will be in a month. This is our chance to make sure that Alonso and Dolores face the consequences of their actions." Renata felt a knot in her stomach. Although she knew this was a crucial step, just thinking about facing Alonso again filled her with anxiety. That same night, while they were having dinner in the apartment, Mariana tried to cheer her up. "Renata, you are stronger than you think. This trial is not only for you, it is for all the women who have ever been silenced. You have to remember that." Renata nodded, drawing strength from her friend's words. The days passed, and Renata's workshop continued to gain popularity. One day, she received an email from the boutique that had shown interest in her designs. They wanted to include one of her pieces in a local fashion show. It was a unique opportunity, and Renata accepted without hesitation. The event would be a week before the trial, which meant she would have to balance the stress of legal preparation with the demands of her growing business. Despite everything, she was determined to prove that she could overcome any obstacle. However, Alonso was not willing to sit idly by. One night, Renata received a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Renata," said Alonso's unmistakable voice, in a tone that tried to be conciliatory. "We need to talk. I swear I want to fix things." Renata took a deep breath before answering. "Alonso, there's nothing to fix. It's over between us, and I'm not going to change my mind. Don't be silly, Renata. This is all crazy. Do you really think you can beat me?" Alonso's tone changed abruptly, becoming cold and threatening. "This isn't a game, and you're going to regret this." Renata hung up without responding, but the call left her trembling. Mariana, who had been in the kitchen, found her sitting on the sofa, pale. "What happened now?" she asked, alarmed. Renata explained the call, and Mariana immediately suggested that they inform Rodrigo. "This can't go on like this, Renata. You have to report it. Every threat counts." Rodrigo added the call to the case file and reassured Renata that they were building a solid defense. Although she still felt afraid, Renata knew she wasn't alone in this battle. The week of the fashion show arrived quickly. Renata worked day and night to make sure her design was perfect. On the day of the event, she felt nervous but excited as she watched the models walk the runway in her creations. Her dress received applause and praise, and several people from the industry approached her to congratulate her. However, as she returned to her apartment that night, she noticed a car following her. Her heart began to pound, and she decided to take a detour onto a busy street. The car disappeared shortly after, but the incident left her uneasy. "This isn't normal, Mariana. I'm sure it was Alonso or someone sent by him," Renata said when she got home. Mariana nodded with a frown. "We have to be more careful. Maybe we should consider staying somewhere else until the trial is over." Renata wasn't convinced, but she knew Mariana was right. The idea of leaving the place that had begun to feel like her refuge saddened her, but she also knew that her safety was the most important. The trial was approaching, and Renata was mentally preparing herself to face it. She knew it would be a crucial moment, not only for her, but also for all the women who had supported her and who were inspired by her story. Despite her fear, she was determined to fight for justice. The trial date was getting closer and closer, and Renata felt the pressure growing with each passing day. Although she tried to remain calm, the nights were especially difficult. She dreamed of Alonso's face and his cries of pain, and she would wake up startled, covered in cold sweat. Mariana, who slept in the next room, heard her get up almost every morning. "Renata, this is affecting your health. Maybe you should talk to a therapist, someone who can help you process all this," Mariana suggested one morning while they were having coffee. "A therapist?" Renata frowned thoughtfully. "I've never considered that. I don't know. I feel like it would be like admitting that I'm not strong enough." Mariana squeezed her hand affectionately. "It has nothing to do with being strong. You already are, but even the strongest people need help from time to time." Renata nodded, promising her that for now, she was focused on staying strong and proving to the world and herself that she could weather this storm. One afternoon, while working in her workshop, she received an unexpected visitor. Laura, the young woman who had sought her support weeks earlier, arrived with a shy smile and a package in her hands. "Renata, I wanted to give you this as a thank you. You helped me more than you can imagine." Laura handed her the package, which contained a small notebook and a handwritten message. "Thank you for giving me strength when I thought I didn't have any. This notebook is for you to write down your dreams because I'm sure you'll make them come true." Renata felt a lump in her throat. Laura was proof that her fight was not only for her, but for so many other women who needed an example of resilience. "Thank you, Laura. This means a lot to me," said Renata, hugging her gratefully. However, not every day was hopeful. A few days before the trial, Renata found a message written in red paint on the wall of the building. "Renata, this is your last warning." The image left her paralyzed. Mariana immediately called the police, who took photos and opened a new investigation. Rodrigo added the incident to the case file. "This only reinforces our position, Renata, but it also reinforces something else. Alonso and Dolores's fear of losing control over you. That is their real weakness," said Rodrigo during one of the meetings prior to the trial. Renata nodded, trying to absorb that idea as a shield against the fear that consumed her. The day before the trial, Mariana and Renata decided to spend the afternoon in the nearby park. They needed a break from the constant stress. Although both knew that the trial was at the center of their thoughts, Mariana tried to distract her by talking about new designs for the workshop. And for a moment, Renata felt a slight calm. But that night, as she finished reviewing the documents for the trial, she received a call from an unknown number. "Renata, this is Dolores." Her ex-mother-in-law's voice was cold and calculating. "Listen to me carefully. Withdraw the complaint and put this behind you. If you don't, you'll regret it. Do you really want to turn this into a war?" Renata clenched her teeth. Her heart was pounding. "You started this war, Dolores. I just want justice, and I'm going to get it, whether you like it or not." Dolores let out a bitter laugh before hanging up. Renata stood there with the phone in her hand, trembling, but something inside her was also beginning to burn with determination. The morning of the trial arrived, and Renata entered the courthouse with her head held high. By her side were Rodrigo and Mariana, who would not leave her alone at this crucial moment. Alonso and Dolores were on the other side of the room, their eyes full of contempt. The judge opened the session, and the first few hours focused on the testimonies. Renata told her story in detail, without omitting the pain, humiliation, and abuse she had endured for years. Mariana also testified, backing up every word her friend said. When it was Alonso's turn, he tried to defend himself, but his arguments crumbled in the face of the evidence Rodrigo had gathered. Dolores, true to form, tried to divert attention by accusing Renata of exaggerating and trying to destroy the family. "Renata was never good enough for my son. All this is nothing more than an attempt at revenge because she couldn't keep her place in our family," Dolores said arrogantly. The judge, however, was not willing to tolerate such behavior. "Mrs. Dolores, this case is not about your personal opinion. The facts and evidence speak for themselves." At the end of the day, the judge handed down his ruling. Alonso and Dolores would be held responsible for the abuse and harassment. Alonso would receive a community service sentence and considerable fines, while Dolores would face additional restrictions to prevent contact with Renata. The ruling was a symbolic victory, but for Renata, it meant much more. As she left the courthouse, Renata took a deep breath as she felt the weight on her chest begin to lift. Mariana hugged her tightly, and Rodrigo shook her hand. "You did it, Renata. This is just the beginning of a new chapter for you." Renata smiled with tears in her eyes. For the first time, in a long time, she allowed herself to feel. After the trial, Renata's life began to transform in ways she had never imagined. Although the wounds of the past still hurt, each day represented an opportunity for healing and move forward. The court ruling gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in years, and the restrictive measures against Alonso and Dolores allowed her to breathe more easily. The workshop had become a thriving space with orders coming in non-stop. Renata spent long hours perfecting each design, but now she did so with a different energy, driven by the freedom she had fought so hard to achieve. Mariana continued to be her unconditional support, helping her with administration and promoting the business on social media. One afternoon, while reviewing the newly arrived fabrics, she received an unexpected visit. It was Laura, the young woman she had helped weeks earlier, but this time she was not alone. With her was another younger woman who looked nervous. "Renata, this is Carla. I told her about you and what you do here. She is going through something similar to what I experienced," said Laura, with a tone full of empathy. Renata looked Carla, who barely looked up, and immediately knew what she was feeling: fear, shame, and that feeling of having no way out. "Carla, welcome. You are in a safe place. Would you like to tell me what is going on?" Renata asked gently. The young woman nodded and with a trembling voice began to tell her story. As she listened, Renata couldn't help but remember the darkest moments of her own life. But this time, instead of feeling trapped, she felt a renewed sense of responsibility to use her experience to help other women move forward. That night, as they closed the workshop, Mariana noticed that Renata seemed pensive. "What's wrong? Are you worried about something?" she asked. "I was thinking about Carla and all the women who have been here," Renata replied. "Mariana, this is no longer just a workshop. I feel like it could be something bigger, a place where women find support and opportunities. Maybe we could offer sewing workshops, or even spaces for them to talk and share their stories." Their stories. Mariana smiled, proud of her friend's vision. "I love the idea, Renata. This could change many lives. How do we start?" Renata didn't have all the answers, but she was determined to take the first step. They began to plan how to turn the workshop into a multifunctional space, looking for resources and allies in the community. However, the threats had not completely disappeared. Although Alonso and Dolores had received their punishment, there were still moments when Renata felt their presence like shadows lurking in the distance. One day, as she was leaving the market, she noticed a familiar car parked nearby. Although she couldn't see who was inside, she felt like she was being watched. That night, she shared her concern with Mariana, who immediately suggested that they reinforce security measures. "We can't take any chances, Renata. Even if they have legal restrictions, we know what they're capable of." Renata agreed and decided to install security cameras in the workshop and in the building. She also spoke with Rodrigo, who reminded her that any violation of the restrictive measures could bring Alonso or Dolores back to justice. Despite these incidents, Renata remained firm in her purpose. Her initiative to turn the workshop into a space for empowerment began to take shape. She organized the first sewing workshop for women in the community, and the response was overwhelming. Dozens of women attended, many of them with stories of overcoming adversity similar to hers. During one of the sessions, Carla approached Renata. "Thank you for this. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I can do something with my life," Carla said with a shy smile. Renata hugged her, feeling that her past pain had found a purpose. The success of the workshop began to attract attention beyond her community. A local organization learned about her work and invited her to an event for women entrepreneurs. Although nervous, Renata accepted the invitation. During the event, she shared her story and how she had transformed her life and business after the abuse. At the end of her presentation, a woman from the audience approached her. "Renata, your story is inspiring. I represent a foundation that supports women entrepreneurs, and we believe your project has great potential. We would like to work with you to expand it." Renata couldn't believe it. What had started as a small workshop now had the potential to become something much bigger. As she walked home that night, Renata allowed herself a moment to reflect. She had come a long way since that New Year's Eve when she left Alonso's house with tears in her eyes and a broken heart. Now she was a renewed woman, strong and determined. However, she knew that the past could still try to catch up with her. Alonso and Dolores were still a latent threat, and although justice had put a stop to them, Renata understood that she had to remain alert. It was a sunny afternoon when Renata officially inaugurated the multifunctional space she had dreamed of for so long. The workshop was no longer just a place to make dresses, but a refuge where women could learn, share their stories, and find strength in the community. Mariana, as always, was by her side, helping her with the preparations. The inauguration was a success. Dozens of women came to see the place, and some even brought their children. Renata welcomed them with a warmth that came from the soul, feeling deeply grateful for having found a purpose greater than herself. "This is just the beginning," Mariana told her as they both watched the women laughing and chatting in the newly decorated space. "I am so proud of you, Renata." Renata smiled with tears in her eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you." That same night, as she was getting ready for bed, her phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. When she opened it, she felt her heart skip a beat. "This isn't over yet, Renata. You will always be mine." It was Alonso. Renata took a screenshot of the message and sent it to Rodrigo. She knew she had to act immediately. Just a few minutes later, Rodrigo called her. "Renata, this is a direct violation of the restraining order. I'm going to present this to the judge immediately. Alonso is playing with fire." Renata thanked Rodrigo, but that night she had trouble falling asleep. Although she had made progress, Alonso remained a persistent threat, a reminder of the abuse she had endured. However, she was not the same frightened woman she had been before. This time, she was ready to face him. 2 days later, Alonso was arrested for violating the protective measures. Renata received the news with a mixture of relief and sadness. She did not wish anyone ill, but she knew this was necessary for him to understand the consequences of his actions. However, Dolores did not remain silent. She appeared at the workshop one day, furious and shouting, "This is all your fault, Renata. My son is in jail because of you," she exclaimed. While the other women in the workshop looked at her in disbelief, Renata remained calm and approached Dolores firmly. "Mrs. Dolores, your son is in jail because of his own actions, not mine. You chose to support him in his abuse instead of stopping him. You have no place here, and I ask you to leave before I call the police." Dolores, surprised by Renata's firmness, had no choice but to leave. The women in the workshop began to applaud, showing their support and admiration for Renata's courage. Over time, the threats ceased completely. Alonso served his sentence, and although he tried to contact her again after leaving prison, Renata reported him immediately. This time, the judicial system acted quickly and severely, ensuring that he could not approach her again. Renata's workshop became a symbol of hope in the community. Women from all over came to learn, share, and heal. Her story spread even further when a local magazine published an article about her work, highlighting her courage and resilience. One day, while reviewing the workshop's accounts, she received a call from the foundation that had shown interest in her project. They wanted to expand the model of her space to other communities in Chicago by funding new workshops in rural areas where women faced similar challenges. Renata accepted excitedly, knowing that her pain had borne fruit that could now change the lives of many more people. New Year's Eve arrived again, but this time it was different. Renata, Mariana, and a group of women from the workshop gathered to celebrate the end of a year full of triumphs. As fireworks lit up the sky over Chicago, Renata took a moment to reflect. She had started that year at the lowest point in her life, feeling broken and hopeless. But now she was a transformed woman, with a life she had not only rebuilt, but elevated to something much more meaningful. Renata raised her glass and toasted with the other women to all of us, to our strength, and to the future we will build together. Laughter and hugs filled the night as Renata looked up at the sky with a heart full of peace and the certainty that next year would be even better. Thank you so much for accompanying this story to the end. Remember, no woman should accept living in an environment of violence or abuse. You are strong, you deserve respect, and you can start over just like Renata did. If you need help, seek support, because you are never alone. And if you liked this video, be sure to check out other exciting content here on the channel. Click on the next video and continue to be inspired by stories of overcoming adversity and courage. Until next time.